One of the characteristics of mobilization is that it is temporary. Organization is permanent and eternal. Clear differences must be made because the unconscious can usually be captured easily around one-issue items, around mobilization items, but it's hard to catch them around organization. But these unconscious must be brought to organization. We must transform mobilization to organization.
What's going on, family? I'm just here to remind you that you can get yourself a copy of my new book, On the Shoulders of Giants, Volume 4, The Caribbean, by visiting my website, www.ontheshoulders1.com, and help support me as I continue on my mission to make sure that my people have our information, even though, there are many people trying to stop us from learning our history. But hey, we can teach ourselves, and one of the tools we can use is my new book, On the Shoulders of Giants, Volume 4, The Caribbean. Remember, visit my website, www.ontheshoulders1.com, to get your copy, and I appreciate your support.
What's up? What's going on, my people? You already know what it is. When you see me, when you see Pat, that means it's Breakdown Friday right here on the Shoulders of Giants YouTube channel. We getting it in red, black, and green, no gang bandanas. Shout out to Dead Prez. If you ain't know about that Let's Get Free album, you need to get that Let's Get Free album in your life. You heard, man? What's going down, Pat?
Nothing much. Go get the book. The book is about Black women and Black men and figuring out what the problem, the chasm is, and finding ways to solve the problem using history. Go get the book. It's on Amazon. Type in The Chasm by Patrick Irvin. It looked like that. And for those of you that's been going out and getting the book, I appreciate you. Make sure you leave a review. And, you can even leave a comment in the videos, and maybe, hopefully, I'll possibly see it. And, I appreciate feedback and criticism. Thank you.
Yeah. Tell him about your book. But yeah, he stole my thunder. But it's all good, man. That's how you strike quick, my brother. You got to, like a FAMU rap, you got to strack again. Yeah. Hey, man, y'all already know how we do a Breakdown Friday, where we take information from our elders, our master teachers, our leaders, our organizers, our mobilizers, people who put the time and work and the effort in to producing content that helps to improve our community. We're looking at this information, we're breaking it down, we're learning it, we're understanding it, and we're creating solutions to be able to improve our situation. We're not saying we got all the answers, but we are coming up with some answers. And all we're asking you to do is help to contribute to solving our issues, and we're just doing our part. So in the comments, add your constructive criticism, the positive constructive criticism, anything that's going to help make us better. That's what we need to do. That's why we do these breakdowns of Breakdown Friday. We appreciate everybody who's been supporting us, everybody who's been helping us on the Shoulders of Giants channel grow. We're almost at 40,000. We're like 39,500, something in that range. So we're almost to 40,000. So thank you to everybody. Want to give a big shout out to the homie Jacob. Thank you for your contributions to this channel, to helping this channel grow. So I really, really, really appreciate you, Jacob. So we're not alone. We're not alone. We got the big homie in the house today. He is the founder and creator of the IDP Expressions 2 Network YouTube channel right here on YouTube. The IDP Expressions 2 Network YouTube channel. Make sure you check that out. He is the director and the star of a landmark documentary called The Independence Day Project. And he is the author of 2020 Through the Eyes of a Social Media Revolutionary. So we call him PC, and he the big homie. So y'all put your hands together for brother Professor Carl Tone Jones up in the building. What's going on?
Hey, what's good? What's good, family? War and peace, because if you want peace, you better be ready to wage war for it. So what's going on tonight, man? Thanks for the intro.
Hey, man, you know how we do it, man. How we do it. Now, I gave you an intro, so I told him I gave him an intro and gave him a little synopsis about your documentary and your book and YouTube channel. But give a little more information so my people know what it is, so they can go support you.
Hey, well, I had a original YouTube channel up with the IDP Expressions Network, but YouTube didn't, they didn't care for it, so they took it down. So we're in a rebuilding phase. So we have the IDP expressions. That's the expression spelled with an X, like Malcolm, and Expressions Network 2, and we're hoping to build it back up. Have great content. We also we focus on a lot of community issues, whether it be the relationship between Black men and Black women in this gender divide, whether it be issues going on, current events happening in the community. I also strive to tell Black men to, empower themselves and to not be kamikazes, for worthless causes. So we talk about that. And hey, man, I'm just glad to be here. Thank you for shouting out the book, 2020 Through the Eyes of a Social Media Revolutionary, where I took, the words off the screen and put them in the book. So if you're interested in knowing what, I consider myself a revolutionary, if you want to know what was going on in the mind of a revolutionary throughout 2020, a very turbulent year, check the book out. You can find us on Amazon. You can also find me on ProfessorCarltonJones.com. And, like you said, we produced the Independence Day Project film. I wouldn't necessarily call myself the star. You brothers played a key role in that film. But I really take a lot of pride in that because you are my brothers. And, it wouldn't have been complete without your additions, and the hard work y'all did, both, on the screen and behind the scenes that people don't know about. But, y'all contribution to the only documentary that still asks the two questions that nobody else seems to want to know is, what does it take for us to build a Black community, self-sustaining Black community free of white supremacy, and what does that look like, what I'm saying, when we build it. So, we create the concepts and then we reverse engineer it throughout the film. And it's the only film that asks that question. So, you can also find that at ProfessorCarltonJones.com.
In the description.
And it's in the description. Thank you. So, and I'm glad to be on the shoulders of giants.
Hey.
My brother Joe is doing big things out here. So, I'm real proud and happy of that. Everywhere I go, somebody is it has the, they say, you want to go to this YouTube channel? They go to and it's Joe's channel. So, we need to get them.
I appreciate it.
40,000. We need 50. We need 5.
Get this thing on up there.
Yeah,
get this thing on up there. Let's do it. Hey, man, welcome to Breakdown Friday, PC. So this your first time on Breakdown Friday, but you are no stranger to the type of conversations that we have. So we here to make sure that we give our people the truth and break it down for them in a way that we can understand this information and use it immediately. So for all my people today, we are breaking down Kwame Ture as he is explaining the difference between organization and mobilization and why both are important to our community, but how one can be used to destroy our community. So let's get into it.
Conscious is linked to mobilization and organization, something we mentioned last year. We must make clear distinctions between mobilizers and organizers. To be an organizer, you must be a mobilizer. But being a mobilizer doesn't make you an organizer. Much confusion is to be found here.
Stop it right there already. We want to make sure we get some understanding because, we like to make sure we fully on point. Mobilization, organization. One is getting people to be able to actively move on something, using people's momentum, using their emotions to get them to actively move on something. And one is actually creating something that can be sustainable, creating, organizing people, placing people in a structure that can be lasting over time. And those people also can be mobilized, but it's something that we can use over and over and over and over again because it's something that's more lasting than just creating a frenzy, I would say, through just mobilization or using people's emotions or even thoughts and ideas just to get people to do something. And an example could be some of the riots that have happened during like 2020 and like a lot of the Black Lives Matter things that have happened, because we've had a lot of rioting and we had a lot of mobilization going on, but what was the real end result, a tangible result from that? So you got a lot of people that's moving, but we don't really have a lot of structure in place. And without structure, we ain't talking about nothing. What you say, Pat?
Yeah, we was talking. This is something that I love this clip, by the way.
Yeah.
Because in the book that I'm getting ready to put out, Tactics for the Revolution, I go into a bit about mobilization versus organization when I talk about Black progress versus white progress and creating systemic change. And one of the things that is always on display there is the fact that mobilizers tend to get all of the fanfare, the flash, the glitz, the glam. Everybody wants to be a galvanizer, the rabble rouser, the people that can spur you to action. But it's the organizers that are really needed for long-term, systemic, and consistent pushes. So one of the things that I have always tried to get people to be and tried to get people to do is to be organizers. You can be both, but if you have to choose one, it's better for you to be somebody that can provide direction and structure to a movement than to be somebody that can just get people going with no structure and no purpose, no anything, because then you just got you're firing people up to hurt themselves. I will say this though, I don't necessarily agree with his summation that to be a mobilizer you have to be an organizer. I think it's totally possible for you to be one and not the other, in either going either direction. Like you can galvanize people and not really know how to provide direction and structure to the movement, and you can provide direction and structure and not know how to energize people. So but that would be, yeah, if we're defining the terms, then that's what I think about when I think about that.
What you say, PC?
One of the things that I take into consideration, considering the most recent uprisings, if you want to call it that, the turbulent year 2020, I look at how those situations sort of fed back into the rampant violence that we currently have in the cities right now because of the ability of organizations, and I'm not going to mention any names, but to galvanize people and to get them into these places and to mobilize them all over the country and to mobilize, but then left them with nothing, what I'm saying? It was just one of those things where you create the hope that you destroy. And so I think it's important to understand the difference. I agree with Pat. I think you can be both, but I think an effective organizer needs a little bit of mobilization, needs to have a little bit of mobilization in them, because you have to be able to get people to come help you when you're organized. You could be a master organizer, but if you can't, mobilize a few people, a small percentage of people, then you're going to struggle with that whole process. And then what we often see is the task of 20,000 ends up in the hands and the shoulders of 10 to 15 people, and the people collapse. They begin to collapse under the structure that they tried to build and form.
Yeah. But even in, let's say you have a organizer who may not be able to mobilize, that organizer needs to partner with a mobilizer. Like one thing we were saying last week is making sure that if you're having true self-reflection and you are honest with yourself about your abilities and things that you can and can't do, you'll put your ego to the side. All right, I can mobilize, but I'm not that good at organization, or I'm good at organization, but I'm not that good at mobilization. I need to link with somebody that can help me, or I need to go somewhere where I can learn how to do the other that can make me a little more effective. But just having one without the other, we can kind of see now we're still ending up with nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. All right, let's keep this thing moving.
Malcolm X was a great mobilizer. He was a great organizer. Martin Luther King was a great mobilizer. He was not a great organizer. These facts can be easily seen from King and Malcolm. When Malcolm went to a place, he left a mosque. When King went to demonstrations, he broke down desegregation and he moved on. As a matter of fact, King was not concerned with organization to the point that even though he was the most popular Baptist preacher in America, without the shadow of a doubt, and probably beyond the shadow of a doubt the most loved, he could not become president of the National Baptist Convention. Yeah, so many of them. The National Baptist Convention. As a matter of fact, if my memory serves me correctly now, and I remember it was Muhammad Speaks that carried the article on the front page in 1964 when King tried to become president of the National Baptist Convention. There was so much confusion there that a minister was actually pushed off the stage and died in the struggle. Yeah. And of course, King lost. The man who won was a reactionary man by the name of Jackson. He never did nothing for the people, never cared about the people, just was a pork chop minister who used their money to put gas in his big Cadillac.
That's a heavy indictment on the church.
Hey man, tell them how you feel. I ain't mad at them though. But I think that was a great example. But it takes me back to conversations that the three of us have had in the past. When we first started talking about being able to go to different cities, go to different places and speak and give our information. You know, we all have the same end goal. I'm driving a Nissan, Pat driving a Toyota, PCU driving a Honda, but we all got the same end goal. But one thing that we talked about was when we go to these cities, all right, let's not do it the normal way. Let's not just go lecture and leave. Let's go, yeah, we could do the lecture, but let's go build with community leaders. Let's go get with the right community leaders and build something, organize something while we're there in that city. I think that's one thing, that's one solution that a lot of people could do who have influence, who have ideas, who have the information, who've put the time in to educate themselves and to be able to organize, mobilize, even do both. When you get the opportunity to organize. When you get the opportunity to mobilize. If you're in front of a captive audience and you got a lot of people who want to hear what you have to say, utilize that. Don't just go in there. I call it the rapper mentality or the performer mentality. Don't just go in there, perform and leave. That does nothing. All you did was shake up your ego and boost your ego, and maybe or maybe not get paid, whether we know it's an ego boost and you're doing your job as well. But we can further eliminate a lot of the issues we have if we really truly utilize the opportunities that we had to organize and mobilize. That's one of the things I think about when I hear that clip. So.
Yeah, when I hear that clip, one of the interesting things to me is, and it's unrelated, but it's in the clip, so I feel obligated to bring it up, especially since the last time we did a show, we talked about Dr.
Malcolm
King.
and Martin.
Yeah. So, I'm gonna be honest. My personal opinion. Go ahead and fry me in the comments. Neither one of them were great organizers. They were both great galvanizers, great mobilizers. They were both great at getting things done. Now, Malcolm are getting people spurred to do things. Now, Malcolm had the benefit of being with a structure in the NOI where he could go to a place and people could use that energy to leave a blueprint, leave a mosque down. And in that, as critical as I am of the NOI, I have to be honest about the fact that the structure and the organization of the NOI has been very effective for getting a lot of things done for them as a group. But when you look at what Martin or what Dr. King, or I'm sorry, what Malcolm was able to kind of structure and organize on his own, Well, he was killed before he really got a chance to do
Right.
his own
So
thing.
we don't really know
So we
fully.
don't know. What we do know is when I think about organizers, I do think about leaders and leaderships. And one of the principal or key metrics of a leader is not only how effective they are at getting the job done, but how many other leaders do they groom up behind them. And in that, that's where I say I think they were both kind of in that same ballpark. Martin Luther King had the Southern Christian Leadership Conference that he was president of, and that organization is still going on today. He had a lot of other organizations he tried unsuccessfully to get going. But on that leadership metric of who was the more effective organizer, I think this is where we come into a space where a lot of people in the pro-black, black nationalist, black first mindset, we don't look favorably upon Dr. King. And I think that was something that the great Kwame Ture kind of let show out. He kind of let it show a little bit, his negative bias towards Dr. King right there. And so I just want to say, like, to me, if we're having a conversation about organizers and mobilizers, I will put both of them in the mobilizer category. And then I would look at somebody like a Nobel Drew Ali or Wallace Farr, or those guys as great organizers because they were able to create organizations and institutions that stood the test of time.
And they're still here.
And are still here. Now, we can argue about the effectiveness of those institutions and the effects that they've had on Black people in America throughout the history. But if we're honest about it, an organizer creates organization that stands the test of time. Those individuals have done that. Other individuals that we celebrate, the Martins, the Malcolms, the others, they have not. So I just wanted to, like, for me, that becomes an important distinction because Martin Luther King catches a lot of heat for not being a great organizer, and he's often held up as a counter to Malcolm X. And it's like, well, when you really look at what they organized, they're kind of on similar levels in terms of that. So, you know, at this point, we're debating whose perspective that we agree on the most. But I do want to hit on something that both you guys said before, which is that we do need both. The NOI, for all of the organization and the structure that it had, needed a Malcolm X, needed a Khalid Muhammad. They need these great mobilizers to come in and push people to action and push their message. You know, the honorable Muhammad's. You need those people to push other people into action, just as much as you need the Nobel Drew Ali's and the other guys who are going to create those organizations and those structures for people to get in and figure out, well, this is my lane in the movement. This is what I do, and I'm gonna do it right here. So that's what so I'm done.
Yeah.
Nah, Wildpack. I mean, you made a lot of great points. And you threw some heavyweights in there. But here's the one thing I will say, and I think it's something that really gets underplayed, is that both Malcolm, Martin, you can even go back to Medgar Evers, they all died before they were able to really stake their claim. None of those men lived to be 40. And so a lot of the things that they were in the process of building, like, we don't really know what the outcome would have been because it was interrupted. When I look at Martin Luther King, I look at the fact that when he went to Memphis, he was organizing the poor people's protest.
Right.
And that was going to be his part. So, he died literally in the infancy of that particular push for his legacy, because that was the most important thing he did after having that conversation with Harry Belafonte about moving his people into a burning house. You look at Malcolm. When Malcolm went to Africa, a lot of people focus on the fact that he spent some time in Mecca, but one of the things he was doing also was organizing a Pan-African alliance between Northern African countries and Southern Asian countries, and it goes without telling that around the assassination of Malcolm X, most of those leaders and dignitaries also met, some tragic endings at around that time. And if we go back to the document that was leaked in the COINTELPRO papers, it spoke specifically about counteracting these particular movements, which I don't think we give our enemies enough credit for how organized they are in creating chaos in our backyard.
Right.
And so I think that, had they had an opportunity,
right,
I think they both were to be organized. And just one last piece, the irony about mobilization and organization is that Malcolm was more successful with his tactics in the North, and Martin was more successful with his tactics in the South. And the fact that right before Malcolm was murdered, they had agreed to combine efforts to which Malcolm would organize the North and Martin would organize the South. So around this particular time, and I don't mean to laugh about it, but around this particular time, Kwame Ture, he was on the run at this time because the same government entity that saw him as a threat was chasing him all through Africa with the CIA. So and I'm not saying it to disperse or to cast any shade towards our good brother, but I think when a lot of that stuff was happening and the organization around that stuff was happening, he was in a place where he really couldn't appreciate what was going on.
Yeah. Well, I think, and adding a piece with Kwame Ture as well is remembering that, because when Pat earlier was talking about the leaders creating leaders, Kwame Ture was coming up under Martin Luther King and the Civil Rights Movement, and he was a part of that generation where their view of the nonviolence was starting to clash with the view of Dr. Martin Luther King. So here we come with the Black Power movement. And then now with this Black Power movement, now this faction has broken away from Martin Luther King's faction. It's because it's kind of like the video I just put up today. The video I just put up on Wednesday on my channel of the revolt. I can't remember the name of the whole video. I just put it up, but during the revolt, you had a splitting ideas of two leaders. You had a political leader and you had the military leader. And the political leader and the military leader, their views started clashing, and the whole rebel group split in two. So now the organization is disorganized and they're weaker now. And so making it relevant to 2022, we have a lot of disorganization going along, and we have a lot of people who are easily galvanized to short-term things like the riots or the marches and things, because we talk about all the time, we'll march all day to no end. The only thing we'll get from these marches is getting toned legs, getting thighs and calves together. But there's no real tangible end goal. It's like, well, we're marching. It's like when I'm driving through Tallahassee and I see people standing in front of the Capitol building holding up their signs, and this one white lady or one black person holding up their sign, and they really believe that they're making change, but you have no kind of organization and nothing structured to help you really make some tangible change. And I think that's where we need to be looking at this, and what we can learn from what he's saying is we need real structure in place to support the mobilization, and that way we can get tangible results from the things that we're trying to get, rather than just sitting up here screaming and howling at the moon.
So. Yeah, well, if you have those things, you no longer have an organization. You're creating the foundation for an institution.
Ooh.
And I think that's one of the things that, that was the focus, the institution of building Black Power. When the Nation of Islam was building schools, they became a threat to the country, to the establishment. When you had the Black business sectors. I mean, we don't even have to, keep it in the Black Power area. We can just go back to Black townships that turned themselves into economic powers. post Reconstruction, and we can see with the institutions what happens when you have that power and you go up against, what's considered to be the most powerful empire of all time, which is the bastion of white supremacy right here in America. I think one of the things we underestimate consistently is the work of our enemy. As the old saying, the devil never sleeps. You know what I'm saying? It just waits. So what's it? Evil never sleeps. It just waits. And so we have to, in the process of building these institutions, we also have to be cunning enough to understand our enemies, and to know that they're coming, and understand that how we need to focus on them. And I think that's one thing that both, unfortunately, Malcolm and Martin, in their time, I don't mean to go off topic, but I think there's one thing they've truly underestimated, is the fact that of how strong the enemies will come for them.
Yeah, I think, because I think that's one of the problems we're still running into, is that most of the time mobilizers are the charismatic leaders. And everybody wants to be one. You know what I'm saying? Everybody wants to be that person that leads the masses, that, and so the challenge we have is understanding that the galvanizers, the mobilizers, there was a time when they were called the agitators,
right?
And they have to know their place and when it's time for them to do their thing. And I think nowadays, because so many people are in such a rush to take on that new spot, they're forgetting that none of the groundwork has been laid for them to be effective.
Right.
You can't mobilize a group of people effectively if, like you said, PC, the groundwork hasn't been done for those people to be able to be organized in their mobilization. As a mobilizer, you got to understand that yours is not the first thing to happen. Yours is the last thing to happen. While everybody else is doing all of the work, putting all of the pieces in place, setting everything up, you need to be waiting. And the challenge with that is the modern day charismatic leader, the modern day mobilizer doesn't like to wait. It doesn't like to be told that they need to wait. They want to be out there talking to the people, stirring up shit. And that's why it's not working. So I would say in today's day, and we've learned this because of the turbulent 60s and 70s when everybody was getting wiped off the map. The first group of people to get wiped off the map were the mobilizers that didn't have the protection that comes with being a part of an organization, with being a part of a power base. The mobilizers ran out there butt naked and got shot in the face. So the lesson we got to learn from that is put on some clothes, put on some armor, and stop running ahead of the group.
Trying to be first.
You go out front, right? You go out front when an organizer or when a collection of people tells you, and when we can point at the pieces and say, we're now ready to engage in a public dispute with the enemy, whoever the enemy might be.
Yeah, it's about knowing when to make your fight visible. In other words, understanding the art of discretion.
If it ain't doing it, if it ain't working, stop doing it.
We unfortunately have people that like to do it harder.
Hey, man, whatever, man. All right, let's move forward.
But he was organized. We say that we must come to know the difference between mobilization and organization because the enemy will use mobilization to demobilize us.
Then when we
that's what we've been talking about.
Right. Hey, it's because it's easy to galvanize a confused group of people. You cut off the head and the rest of the body runs rampant and just runs around all disorganized and with just doing anything just to try to make something happen, and there's no tangible results at the end. It's once again we see all the marching that we keep doing. Look at what we keep doing. All the social media campaigning that doesn't work. But but we keep doing it. And now, like he's saying, these white folk been studying us. The white folk know all of our little buttons. They know how to get us. Think about it. That's why once a year, everybody gets all up in arm and protest about a killing that has been sensationalized. They do it once a year of a killing that has
Usually
been
in the summer.
sensationalized. Right. People, if especially if it's a death by a police officer and a black person, because that happens more than people think. But that one killing is sensationalized, and now everybody's BLM, BLM, BLM. Oh yeah, BLM. Now we seeing what's happening with that, because you had an organization, then you had a movement. The movement had no organization. Then you had scammers who organized something that stole all the money from the people, because there was no real structure in place from the beginning. Just a whole bunch of people screaming and yelling, hoping for change, who keep doing something that's not happening. Now, do the movement need to be there? Yeah, but it needs to be organized, and we need to get better organization, and we need to do a better job and be better discerning about picking leaders and putting people in positions. Just because they sound good don't mean you pick them, because they may be placed in your presence to help further destabilize you. That's all I'm saying.
I want to add to that real quick, because I've been seeing a lot over the last few years, and especially with the young people I talk to, this growing idea of a decentralized organization, a decentralized, a faceless movement, as promoted by the Black Lives Matter organization movement. And my thing to that is, it doesn't work. And Black Lives Matter is proof that it doesn't work. Yes, nobody knows who the real, well, we know now because there have been a lot of organized or articles and things like that put out. But on the onset, nobody really knew, unless they did a lot of digging, who those three women were that led the movement. And even now, there's still no central face to it. But that also opens the door for anything and everything to be labeled a part of the movement, which kind of destroys the movement.
Which happened.
Right. And that's why I say it doesn't work. Look, y'all can't be scary and timid about this. When you're ready to move, you need to move, but you need to move with a clear purpose, a clear mission, and unfortunately, a clear face. All the successful organizations, institutions, corporations, and everything else have a clearly defined person, face, and idea that's associated with what they're trying to do. And they do that so that negative actors can't just attach themselves to what they're trying to do and take away energy, resources, or publicity away from the thing that they're trying to accomplish. Black Lives Matter was not successful in a lot of the things they tried to do simply because nobody really knew what that term meant in terms of the organization behind it. So now you have people from various communities with a bunch of different ideologies, viewpoints, perspectives, and ways of doing things, all claiming to be under this same banner. Imagine how easy it is for people that hate Black Lives Matter to destroy Black Lives Matter when they can attach anything that they want to that movement, which is in effect exactly what they did. I rest my case.
Well, you know, I when I look at organizations like that, and what Stokely said, I think he was speaking from a more natural form of chaos and confusion.
Right.
But I think what we've seen is organized chaos and confusion, controlled opposition, which I believe, now I can say it since it's been already mentioned, Black Lives Matter. You know, I think they were purposefully put in place to continue to destabilize the Black community. And one of the things I think that was the most heinous crime they committed, like I said before, they gave hope to the hopeless and then they took it away. And I've seen our children, and we're playing a black text right now because we can't go out as boots on the ground grassroots organizers and talk to the same people who were marching around all throughout the city, who were laying on highways and laying all over the place doing die-ins. Now, they have been not only desensitized, but now they have disdain for anything that speaks to Black power, because they associated it with Black power. Black Lives Matter did a great job of associating themselves with the red, black, and green flag, associating themselves with key figures in history that would probably disown or have some very distasteful things to say about the organization had they still been alive today. So we really have to examine what they did, and this is why I say, we had so many we've lost a generation of young people because they've taken to the streets with reckless abandon now, and with the purpose of having no purpose. And I think a lot of damage was done with this attack on the Black community, as I like to say, in the name of an organization with Black faces that were funded by, geopolitical figures around the world, and it served its purpose. And when it no longer served its purpose, they served those same Negroes up. And that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, and I just want to add that we're bringing up Black Lives Matter because it's the most obvious, but take a look at all of the Black organizations that have come about throughout the years, and just ask yourself, what real progress or what real outcomes have we gotten from these organizations that we attach ourselves to or that attach to the Black community? NAACP, Urban League, the Black Caucus, any organization you can think about. What about your local organizations? Because as you guys were talking, it got me to thinking about what's happening here in Tallahassee. The South Side of Tallahassee, the Black side, is very disorganized. It's easy to mobilize. It's a college town. So the mobilization is just like that. All you got to do is say something that's anything swinging woke in a woke realm, and everybody gonna be at the Capitol building protesting. They're gonna be down the street protesting, but nothing really comes out of it. And you have organizations who are benefiting off of this, but nothing in a community ever gets better. You have I would call them scattered new pop-up leaders who supposed to be leading the South Side to new heights and to a better position, but people are steadily getting displaced. So, all right, people. So, at what point? But before the displacement, people had 10 years to get organized and get their stuff together.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So let's move forward.
Mobilization is very easy, very, very easy. Because since we're people who are instinctively ready to respond against acts of injustice, anytime there's one little act of injustice, we can blow it up and we'll find people who come and make some mass demonstration around it. Miss Sally lost her job. Let's rally. She'll get her job back. People will come and rally. So-and-so got kicked out of school because the teacher's unjust. The people will come and rally. They will come to rally at issues. And this is what mobilization does. It mobilizes people around issues. Those of us who are revolutionary are not concerned with issues. We're concerned with the system. The difference must be properly understood. The difference must be properly understood. Mobilization usually leads for reform action, not to revolutionary action. If we would look scientifically at the October 16th million and more march, we would see clearly that this was a mobilized event, not an organized event. We must know clearly the difference between mobilization and organization.
Hold on. I said a million and more march. That's
a lot of shots being fired.
But it's real though. It's real, like he's talking about mobilizing people around an issue. We just got through talking about it. Hey, somebody was killed by the police. Mobilize around the issue. Hey, they said this about black people. Mobilize. They said this about black people. Mobilize, march. Mobilize, march. Like, we the marchingest people ever, but we don't never get no real change. And it's just because, once again, they know us, like he's talking about, focusing on the bigger picture, focusing on the root cause of all of this, the root cause of all our issues: racism, white supremacy, racism, or whatever order you want to put it in, right? That's the root cause of all of this. Like we talked about in the past, one of the issues that we're having with trying to articulate and show the effects of white supremacy is we're focusing on it, we're mostly focused on individual things that happen that we can try to say this is racist, this is racist, this is racist, instead of being able to show it from a macro picture of a systematic level and showing this is how this system is negatively affecting us. We're not being able to do that. And then on the other end, where every time something happens, everybody running out in the street. There was a situation here in town where when a couple of when Breonna Taylor was killed, and who was that? George Floyd around the time Breonna Taylor, or was it was somebody else? But remember when they had the trans man was killed here in Tallahassee by the police officer, and everybody tried to rally around that. It was funny because you had people who knew all the details, and you had people who didn't know all the details. But you had strife within the streets here because people wanted to just go march and go march and go march about it. And you had people on the other side who was like, "Well, I don't think that's the best thing for us to do right now. I think we need to take a more another plan of action that's going to get better results." And we're seeing strife between the factions of people, black people here in Tallahassee. And we just being in the college town is unique because every time something happens, we can see the mobilization happen. We can see people get galvanized. We can see people rallying, just like when they painted Black Lives Matter in the middle of the street. Out there, everybody's happy, but nothing's changed. Nothing's changed. Keep getting gassed up for nothing.
I think it speaks to the beef right now between mobilizers and organizers. Amongst one of the many different beefs that we have in the communities, there's that one as well, and that's just because of the difference in the way people view things. When you take a micro view, when you're talking to somebody that takes a macro view, there's going to be some disagreement in the importance of certain things. And instead of us being able to maturely and intellectually see that difference and utilize it to our benefit, we start beefing with each other. And I've been a part of that conversation before where I look at things from a macro perspective. I'm usually one saying we need to stop focusing on the individuals and start focusing on the collectives. Let's stop focusing on the one murder story and start focusing on the collection of them and the story that they all tell about the system we live in. But when we're having that conversation with somebody that's excited by this one story, they usually start calling you insensitive or saying you're out of touch, or they start throwing all of these labels out at you. And it's like, and then on the other side, to be balanced, I have seen on the other side where people that have a viewpoint similar to mine will say, no, you're immature, you're emotional, you're too quick to respond. So, but neither one of them, very rarely do either one of them take a step back and say, hey, look, let's come up with a plan of action for how we can create change that will prevent this from happening again permanently, not in the short term, but in the forever term. And that means that, again, as I said earlier, mobilize them. You need to sit still while us organizers can organize,
get a plan of action,
figure this shit out.
Yeah. It's akin to the start of we can go to the Haitian Revolution. The Haitian Revolution started in 1791. What was it? 1791, right? Yeah. And it started with the organization, people like Cecilia Fatima, going from plantation to plantation, laying down the plan, teaching the field hands how to grow certain plants and flowers and turn them into poisons so that they can weaken the enemy. And it wasn't until, Bookman went inside the mountain and did Bookman's prayer, that they were actually ready. But it was like what you spoke of earlier, Patrick. The organization took place to create the opportunity for the leader to emerge. We have been placed in this thing right now where, especially when you look at the death of Martin Luther King, look who jumped into the spotlight right afterwards. You know what I'm saying? And the ambition that, certain members, Messy Jesse, I don't mind calling them out, took to become the next leg or the next face. And I never met Kwame Kilpatrick a long time ago. And it was just a passing situation. It wasn't like we sat down and had dinner or anything. But, when I look at his downfall, he said his talent took him places that his maturity couldn't handle, or lack of maturity couldn't handle. And a lot of people now, we have a lot of people who utilize this medium of social media. And if I can go live just like you can go live, and if I can make a post just like you can make a post, then all of a sudden you don't have that journey. You don't have to push past certain levels. You don't have to earn your keep. You could just show up on stage.
There's no rites of passage.
Exactly. And that's what we're seeing right now. And like you said earlier, right now, this is about showtime. It's about, getting my shine. It's about being the face. It's funny because when people talk about people having like a Jesus, was it Jesus syndrome, or that white man rescue syndrome, the Superman syndrome? They often talk about the savior syndrome. They often talk about it from the perspective of the people looking for a savior, but they rarely talk about it from the perspective of the person feeling as though they themselves are the savior. And I think that's what comes with a lot of this turmoil. And then when you add that to a mix, the perfect storm of creating a people who are basked and stuck in arrested development, creating a people who have been taught not to trust one another, have been taught, to be dishonorable to one another. It's very hard to get a collective of people like that in the same room and expect for them to be able to come together and formulate a plan that will work, and not even really study and observe how our enemies do it. Because they don't just step out there on faith. They plan. They pay multi-billion-dollar think tanks to organize and strategize to keep us in position. And most of the time, that money comes out of the taxpayers' pockets.
We be gassed up.
Right. So I digress, brothers. I digress.
All right, let's move forward.
One of the characteristics of mobilization is that it is temporary. Organization is permanent and eternal. Clear differences must be made because the unconscious can usually be captured easily around one-issue items, around mobilization items, but it's hard to catch them around organization. But these unconscious must be brought to organization. We must transform mobilization to organization. We say the enemy will come and use mobilization to demobilize us. Many brothers and sisters who've been to the Million and More March will say to you, I was there. Well, what are you doing today, my sister? I was there. There weren't too many sisters out there, but with 1 million brothers together, where I had to be. I was there. Yes. And then, of course, you find brothers, I was there. I helped you. What are you doing today, brother? If we're not careful, we allow mobilization to become events. The struggle is never an event. It's a process, a continual, eternal process.
Well, we some eventing ass people then. Like we be eventing like there's no tomorrow. Event. Because it's like look at now how they are trying to mobilize people, mobilize black men specifically, especially with the Georgia political campaigns. They're trying to mobilize black men specifically to vote, to go register to vote and to vote Democrats specifically. And one of the ways that they do that is very undermining and demeaning way. But with the video with Trina and Saucy Santana, no voting, no vucking. And Trina talking about she wants somebody to gerrymander her coochie and stuff like that. And it's very insulting. But that's what happens when you don't have your stuff together, Black people. It's our fault. It's our fault that even the Black people who work for the Democrats or who support the Democrats or who the Democrat supporters or whatever, they are even on the side of the people to help sell out their own people, because they understand that, hey, ain't like y'all, it's not like y'all organized, it's not like y'all really care, and it's not like y'all gonna do something about it. So guess what? Last time we had to vote, get your booty to the polls. Go ahead, put the strippers out, get your booty to the polls. Now, no voting, no fucking. Cause guess what? What you gonna do about it besides be mad and just talk about it? You ain't gonna do nothing. You ain't gonna really create no real political organization for yourselves and really take control of your political futures. Cause that's what they thinking. Like, just come on, man. We know y'all not gonna really take y'all stuff into y'all own hands and just really say, all right, you know what? We're not messing with the Democrats or Republicans or nobody. We're gonna create our own political party, and we're gonna make sure that we leverage our votes for real, tangible outcomes. Because that would be too much like right.
You just wanted to get that off your chest, didn't you?
I just wanted to get it off my chest. Now, because but to tie things in to make it relevant though, because I did want to do that too. But it helped. It helped. But I mean, but look at the current situation of what's going on.
I get what you're saying, because that's been one of my issues with, if we're going to be on politics, and I still don't understand what gerrymandered at ussy means. I don't know what that means. I looked up the definition of gerrymandering like 4 different ways.
That mean to rig stuff up, don't it?
Right, like to politically manipulate a situation to your advantage. How do you do that to vagina? I don't know. Maybe I don't know. But anyway,
man, that comes from the baddest.
Everything else that's been done to her vagina. Anyway, I'm sorry.
But you know, one of the that is a great point when you start talking about how they try to get Black people to vote. There's very little organization in place, and to me, organization would entail setting up institutions and structures and organizations that train Black people to be politically aware and knowledgeable, to understand how to make things happen in the political systems of America, and how utilizing the vote is just one aspect of getting things done. It's not the only, it's not the most important, it's not the most necessary. It is just one of the many different tools at your disposal. And the reason I say it's not the most important is because if we go back to the Prohibition era, white women got white men to outlaw they love drinking more than they love their wives. And they outlawed drinking because their women created that much of a fuss about it, and they outlawed alcohol, and women didn't have the right to vote when they did that. So that's like one of the most powerful measures for me that says that it is possible to get things done without voting. Voting just happens to be one of the most easy ways to get your voice heard. But that being said, they don't have these campaigns to say, understand the political system, understand the power you have, understand the responsibilities of being a so-called citizen of this nation. No, the campaign is always rock the vote, show up to vote, no voting, no, you know, all of these other things to try to get Black people to just go vote. It don't matter why you voting, don't matter who you voting for.
Don't matter.
Vote. We want you to vote for us, but we don't care.
Like the lady, like the news lady on the Black Law on MSNBC. Hey, she said Black men just fall in line.
Right, but it also to get into the mobile. But it also gets into the mobilization to demobilize people when you start talking about the shame tactics that they use. You know what I'm saying? But also the misinformation tactics that they use. Black women only look, I'm gonna be honest. black men and black women vote overwhelmingly Democratic.
Yeah.
Overwhelmingly. Like it's not even close. So this narrative that black men are turning in some direction that is against black women, when you have, say, 90% of black women voting Democratic and 80% of black men voting Democratic, what, like, that's misinformation at its finest. And the fact that so many people, is in particular the talking heads on the TVs, are standing up trying to talk about, well, what's going on here and what's going on there. You got to wonder, are they trying to mobilize something into existence that does not exist here? Are they trying to create a conflict that does not exist here? And why are they not creating real institutions and organizations that would really alleviate or even study these problems from a black focus that black people care about and understand? That's, just tying the whole thing up.
But
so I get what you're saying.
One point in the political process, and you're talking about how they are especially trying to shame black men into voting specifically Democrat. So black men have always voted Republican at a higher percentage or higher rate than black women. But the last couple of elections, or especially the last election, we saw an increase in black people voting Republican, and black men and black women. So I think it was about a 6% increase on both sides. So it was about the same amount had increased, but that percentage of black men who had already been voting Democrat had already been a bit larger than what it was for black women. But there was about a similar increase. But they tried to spin that because the number has always been bigger. So they tried to spin that narrative to say, hey, 15% of black men are now voting Democrat. But you ain't tell them that. And they was like, there's a 6% increase, but you ain't tell them it's a 6% increase in black women voting Democratic as well. They're able to use the mobilization to demobilize us, because we already don't have no organization. And people are not going to go look at statistics. People are not going to go look at the actual statistics to really verify stuff that people are saying. They're just going to believe what they say and get riled up off of it and just start doing stuff.
Yeah, well, when you fully analyze it, is basically shut up and dribble.
Right.
Yeah. And what it also comes down to is when you speak collectively, let's go back to the events. When you are showing historically that all you'll do is show up for events, these marches and things of that nature, but you're not willing to organize behind the scenes. You're not willing to create foundations. You're not willing to utilize a critical mass to start building infrastructures around the ideas. You're not creating or putting money or putting resources into creating think tanks to understand, get a better understanding in terms of what's going on. You're not doing surveys amongst the people. You're not doing any of those things. Well, your enemy recognizes this. Your enemy recognizes the fact that you're not even pulling up with policies of your own, agendas of your own. And you're asking us, well, what are y'all going to do? And so we'll talk about prison reform as if that's a black issue, and they'll do the feel good politics because they're Negroes who will buy into that. The virtual currency of popularity, fame, and clout, overshadows the needs of the rest of the community. So, when we see these things happen, and let's not forget when the Democratic Convention was held here, and I believe it was 2016 here in Philadelphia. I believe Hillary Clinton's campaign managers had leaked out. It leaked somehow that they were not to deal with any issues concerning black people, that they were just to pander to black people, but not make any political promises. And for her, for that to leak, and then black people still say, well, we need to support her anyway, speaks to the lack of integrity politically we seem to have as a people, collectively and individually. So until we get to that place where we're actually, organizing, and I like the fact that Ice Cube went out and tried to come together with a plan for Black America. I mean, it might not have been perfect, but at least it was a step in the right direction. Black people having their own agendas. I think we need to, look more so into situations like that, because that's where we'll find our power. The reason why they don't have to respect us is because they don't see us as powerful. And like I said before, the arrested development of Black people will have us voting for somebody because they have hot sauce in their purse, or they can do the Watutsi, or they'll put strippers on the pole and say, from the pole to the pole, or whatever the hell that campaign was. You have Juvenile talking about vax that thing up, all sorts of things. And we know that every class of people have sellouts, but our sellouts seem to do so for pennies on the dollar. We have to continue to focus on creating necessary futures for our children. And if our children isn't a powerful enough motivation, then I don't know what else will be. So,
and speaking of that, building off of that, if we don't have any structure within our homes, we won't have structure within our communities. We won't have a neighborhood to structure, and then there will be no overall structure. So we're all just disorganized all over the place, coupled with being emotionally immature. So
yes.
since we're emotionally immature, all they got to do is just rile us up. Just rile, put a sensational story out and rile us up. Make sure it has some great racist overtones and undertones and microaggressions and all these things. Or put something on social media, put something on TikTok, have a white girl say something, and all the Black people getting mad at it and all these things here, but nothing really comes from it. Going back to what you're saying, that's why they don't respect us.
It comes back to the bottom part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. If you can't fill those bottom two levels, where you're talking about providing provision, providing access to clothes, providing access to shelter, and then the second level is to be able to protect it all. If you can't provide those things in your people, you can't provide for people. Your people have no need to invest in you. And we are in a situation where we depend on our enemies for everything, whether it's feeding us, whether it's employment, whether it's access to schools and education. All this education people brag about, typically in white-owned institutions or white-supplied, white-sponsored institutions and blackface. So, until we start getting to the place where we invest and we stop trying to do the pimp shit and try to, suck every, bit of energy out of the people who are willing, and we start ourselves investing and refurbishing the people who are actually, trying to create that liberated space for Black people, then, 20 years, 50 years from now, it's going to the same things that was relevant 70 years when Malcolm said it, 65 years when Martin said it, 100 years when Carter G. Woodson said it, W.E. Du Bois said it. All those things are still relevant today because we have not moved forward. And then, in fact, just as Dr. Amos Wilson said, as much as you can make progress, you can also regress. And we have been doing a lot of regression over the last few decades.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And I want to say real quick, I actually think you bringing up the political angle was perfect for this discussion, because politics is the means of managing and distributing power. All right, it's how do you handle the levels of power? That's the discussion of politics. You get three people in a group together, a few things are going to develop. One is culture, the other is politics. There's going to be some other things to develop, but those are going to be one of the first two things to develop: the culture of that group and the politics of how that group makes decisions. And we have got to understand the necessity of being politically aware, and that comes with understanding the necessity of being mobilized and organized. And then even with the Democratic Republican thing, understanding that the fact that many of us aren't voting pro-Democrat, we're voting anti-Republican.
Right.
That says a lot in and of itself. Like, that says mountains in and of itself that needs to be analyzed, broken down, and talked about on a much deeper level than we're having that discussion. Even when it comes to Trump being president, there are more people that voted for Trump as a response to their disillusionment with the political process and their hatred of the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and just want to see this shit fall apart, than there were people that actually supported Trump. That's something that needs to be looked at and understood by the American society. Well, guess what? The American political establishment is doing their legwork to understand what the hell that's all about. Are black people doing the legwork to understand
No.
why we would choose to vote against the lesser of two evils versus coming up with a good that we can actually support?
Oh man. And when I say that, when I'm in conversation with people and they're trying to convince me why we should vote for the lesser of the two evils, I'm like, but yeah, we had 4 years to create our own candidate, to bring up our own candidate, to create something for ourselves. Even if we don't create our own candidate, to at least create a voting power block. We have 4 years to do this. We keep strapping ourselves or hamstringing ourselves and then coming at the last minute. It's like, well, we got to pick one of them. And in this past case, it was, well, Trump gives me negative emotions. I have a negative emotional reaction every time I see Donald Trump. I don't like Donald Trump because I always used to just, and I'm not telling people to vote for either one, but just using common sense. When you ask people, well, why are you trying to convince me to vote this way versus this way when neither side is going to be for us? Well, because I don't like him.
Yeah, it was a knee-jerk reaction, which what you would expect from a people who are dealing with arrested development. It was a very childish response, and this is something that our enemies play on. And let's not forget, and we talk about this in our private conversations. Let us not forget that we're dealing with a situation where Black people have been under tremendous assault. Be it politically, be it economically, be it socially, but also biological and chemical warfare that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, year in, year out. It wasn't just a crack epidemic. We also have situations where, the very water we drink from is poison, with chemicals like fluoride and, and faulty piping, lead poisoning. And then we also have, like I said, the agents of chaos. I pulled up something, and I'm gonna leave it at this. The FBI paid, and this is somebody sent this to me. So the source is, by the way, the openbook.com. So if anybody want to check it out, the FBI paid approximately $294 million to informants between 2012 and 2018. So if we're looking at just the FBI, we're not even talking about local law enforcement. We're not even talking about the other alphabet agencies. We're not even talking about people who are direct affiliates of political candidates, both local, state, and national. So, we have a lot of enemies because the only threat to white supremacy is the Black community. They don't give a damn about the Latino explosion coming through the border. They don't care about that because most Latinos want to be white. So, and they want to partner up with white supremacy. Their major concern is us, and as soon as we recognize the threat we present and stop, it's akin to the elephant that as a child, as a baby elephant was tied to the pole.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now, we're strong enough to rip that pole out the ground, but we got to realize that. And too often we still have the mindset of that tiny elephant that won't leave the pole. So
What's most sad about what you just said, PC, regarding the FBI statistic? If that's true, and I have no doubts that they put out a couple $100 million to informants. There's a Black person somewhere just heard that and was like, "Shit, I'm finna be a snitch."
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's more lucrative to them as an individual to be a snitch than to stand up for something.
Yeah.
Hey man, look. Like we said, we do these breakdowns to put thought and answers and things that we need on the table to help move forward. In this case, for this episode, to help us really organize ourselves, so we can be better, so we could make better use of the mobilization that we have. I'm gonna end this with a quote from 2020 through the eyes of a social media revolutionary. This is on page 42 because it go with what we're saying. It said affirmations are cute, but they're nothing in comparison to actualization. Black folk, we got to get up, get out, and get something, because if we don't, this shit gonna keep falling apart and keep falling further apart. Hey, that's how we do it. Joseph Ward, Patrick Irvin, Professor Carl Tone Jones. Make sure you go subscribe to the IDP Expressions 2 Network YouTube channel so you can support the homie. All the links and things to everything he got going on is in the description. You know how me and Pat do. We'll be back next week. We love everybody who's supporting what we got going on. We're gonna keep this thing moving. Peace.